Hi, this is Jackie's Reading Room, and I'm your host, Jackie P. Have you turned some pages today? Full disclosure, I have read and enjoyed several novels by John Grisham and Stephen King. I've also watched several films and TV series based on their books, many of which can be considered modern classics today. So, what's the hype? If you haven't read anything from these authors, where should you start? You may wonder. Well, today I'd like to give you some facts and my personal opinion on these writers and their work so you can choose to read and or watch or not, but hopefully it's going to make you want to read. That's my whole point. Just so you know, today's facts I found on a new website that I discovered uh, in my research that is called wordsrated.com. I'm going to put the links, and I found some super interesting statistics on both these writers, and it's actually quite impressive. So let's get started. Fact number one: between them, John Grisham and Stephen King have written more than 120 books. And I'm not talking just about novels. Um, Obviously, they have written a lot more novels than other types of books. But um, I'm talking about books in general, and obviously they've written stories as well, essays, and so on. So bottom line is there is a lot to choose from here. While you may know that John Grisham is an expert in the legal thriller genre, such as A Time to Kill, which is his first novel published in 1989, Stephen King, on the other hand, is literally the king of horror and suspense. For example, you may very well know the modern classic Carrie, which was written in 1974 and which was also made into a film, actually twice, but I will talk about films a bit later. So, as I was mentioning, they both write mostly fiction, but they've also written some nonfiction. So, an example I wanted to give you for Stephen King is a memoir that is called On Writing, a memoir of the craft, came out in 2010, and it's part memoir and part advice on writing. And I'm going to say I read parts of this book because I don't think I read the whole thing, and it was very interesting. And he talks about when he started writing. I do remember that there was actually a chapter where he describes, that writing of Carrie, his first novel, which was quite some time ago. So super interesting. And you may know that John Grisham wrote this nonfiction title called The Innocent Man. And so it was, I believe, made into a series. So you can look that up as well. Fact number two. Both John Grisham's and Stephen King's books are available in many different formats and in several languages. One of my former episodes was about books and translations. So clearly, if you have friends who do not master English or whose first language is another language, quite likely you'll find their books translated. So you can get John Grisham and Stephen King novels in paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook, even in the website wordsrated.com. They even included the length of the audiobook, which I thought was interesting. And so it also goes with the number of pages. So, for example, The Stand, which is Stephen King's novel from 1978, has 823 pages and therefore is 47 hours and 47 minutes as an audiobook. So hours and hours of pleasure, that's for sure. And they've also written different genres. So obviously, most of Stephen King's books will be about horror or suspense, but he's also written children's books and graphic novels, and some nonfiction. And John Grisham has a teen series called Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer. Right? He's Theodore Boone is this 13-year-old young boy whose parents are lawyers, and he sort of solves small crimes in his town. The first of this series came out in 2010, and I read that first one because I read some young adult fiction, and it was really fun to read because obviously he gets into all kinds of situations. Another example that I want to tell you is one of John Grisham's latest novels called The Judge's List from 2021. You can find it in Spanish as La Lista del Juez. This is one example, but clearly many other languages, same for Mr. King. Fact number 3, you can watch instead of read. Sometimes in life, we either don't have the time, don't have the energy, maybe we want to spend some time relaxing at home with some family members, and so we sit down and watch something together. Well, many of John Grisham's and Stephen King's books have been made into film, and I'm sure you could name a few yourself. I'm going to give you some of my favorites. So The Pelican Brief is a movie that came out in 1993 starring Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, and it's based on John Grisham's novel The Pelican Brief, which came out as a book in 1992. Now, you know that I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so all these actors, they were so popular. They still are, but it was, I guess, the beginning of their careers. So the fast pace of this film, it was very well done. I also recently watched again The Firm, the film, which came out in 1993, based on the book of the same name, starring none other than my teenage crush, Tom Cruise. And I have to say, I liked the film better now, and I don't know why. I had my Tom Cruise phase. I believe I mentioned that before. And I don't know. I at the time, I didn't like the actress they chose to play his wife. But now that I watched it again, I guess it was fine. So things change. And I believe I've read that novel, and it's just, you can't stop turning the pages. For Mr. King, I have a copy here of a book called Different Seasons. And in this book, you have 4 stories, or 4 novellas, if you may. And the first one is called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which is the basis of the beautiful, amazing, fantastic film entitled The Shawshank Redemption from 1994. I believe I mentioned that already. It's one of my favorite films. The music in this film is amazing. The actors are great. Morgan Freeman, Tim Robbins. So if you haven't watched that, you should. And there's another story called The Body, which I believe is the basis for Stand By Me, the 1986 film. And Stand By Me is like this classic as well that you should definitely watch. So lots to read and watch here for sure. And in terms of watching and reading, one more that I'd like to mention is Carrie. The modern classic. I talked to you about it a bit before. 2 film versions, one from 1976, which was very scary, and it was scary because it felt like it could have been real. And then the 2013 version that I haven't seen, so you might have to watch that and let me know. Very good film, the 1976 version. And I loved the novel. The novel is actually one of Stephen King's short novels. It's only, let me tell you this here, I have the statistic. Carrie is only 199 pages, so it's really not that long. Easy read, and I thought it was extremely well done, and especially when you think it's the first one that he wrote. Very good. Listen, these authors, they come up with new books, I would say at least every year and a half, sometimes even more than one per year. So you have definitely some choice there. But I would start with the first ones if I were you. A Time to Kill for John Grisham, and Carrie for Stephen King. But also, if ever you'd like to watch the movie It, or It Part Two, they made some recent versions. They are quite scary films, so I wouldn't recommend that to young kids. There's a lot for you to choose from, both in written and film format. Hope that it made you want to go to your local bookstore, or go to a used bookstore. For sure, you'll find at least a couple of copies of some of their books there, because there are so many out there. They've sold quite a few copies of their books. Hopefully, it made you want to turn some pages. I'm Jackie P, and I will see you next week. Take care, and please share.